Welcome to the Atomic Impact Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Osborn, and on this podcast, we interview successful business owners for them to share atomic, impactful lessons that they've learned throughout the course of their business and share them with us so that we can all learn as well. This show is sponsored by the LinkedIn Reverse Podcast Method, the new way established businesses are creating a reliable acquisition channel of conversations with their ideal prospects. We use this method to book 26 qualified leads and sales calls in 10 days without any ad spend, outreach, endless social posting, or any of the old and ineffective traditional methods that everybody hates. To find out more, direct message me on LinkedIn to have a chat. That's Jason A. Osborn. The link to that will be in the show notes below. But on today's show, I'm excited to have Jonathan Leafe. Jonathan is the owner of Leafe Consultancy, where he provides consultancy to founders and directors of creative marketing agencies and the like. So, Jonathan, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here. And I want to start off by asking a question that I always love to start off with, which is this. If you were able to go back to when you first started your business, but knowing what you know now, what would you do differently in the first 12 months?
Fantastic question. Well, I started my business in 1989, so it's like pre-digital, right? So we can do loads more things than we can do today that we couldn't do then. But the one thing that I've learned, and it's consistently the truth, is that relationships matter. So if the harder you lean into making relationships and keeping those relationships and keeping ahead of those relationships, you will be more successful. Full stop.
I fully agree with you, and I love this topic. So we're going to dive into a little bit more around this. I think the everyone realizes that they know relationships. It's a buzzword. We got to build relationships. Okay, great. I've heard this a million times. I don't think people really understand it though, right? I don't think they really understand how to build the right types of relationships. So, what have you found works as well as doesn't work to build those types of relationships as you're building business?
I think it's really easy for founders to get busy, and actually they start taking orders rather than making orders. And I think to really have a successful business relationship, you have to be incredibly useful to your clients. And to do that, you have to know more about them in lots of ways than they do themselves. So you've got to know their industry, you've got to know their business, you've got to know their competitors, and that's how you build successful business relationships. They become to rely on you. They'll think, right, if I'm going to do that, do you know what? I'll just check with Jonathan.
Yeah, that's a really great perspective. Is if I'm going to do something, I need to check in with,
Correct.
and
And
that
if
I
you
think
get
is
to that position, then you're in a really powerful position in that relationship. Not you're going to take advantage of it, but you become incredibly useful for that other person. And on the flip side is, I also already mentioned it, when you become an order taker, they think, well, what am I paying you for? Where's the expertise I'm getting? I'm telling you what to do. Where's the value in that? And I have to, they never get in touch with me. I have to reach out to them to get them to do something. That is where relationships eventually run out of steam and go wrong.
yeah, yeah. Two things you mentioned in that. I think the second point, I think those are often the worst types of clients to have as well when they just see you as an order taker. There's not really a lot of relationship. You just become a commodity. But one of the things that he didn't say directly, but I think indirectly in what you're saying around this is for people to get to that point of saying, hey, I'm just going to reach out to Jonathan around this stuff. You have a long-term perspective in mind. And I think so many businesses now, they're just looking for the quick wins as opposed to how do I build a 5-year, 10-year, 20-year business. Share some thoughts around that as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, basically my model is, I just call it like the pyramid model.
Yeah,
And at
yeah.
the top, you have your new prospects coming into your business.
Hmm.
And then it's your job to force them into the middle and the bottom tranche where the magic happens. So once you've got regular or retained customers or even long-term value customers that are taking something from you that's got a really long time scale, and that could be a year, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe even 10 years. I had clients for 10, 15, 20 years, to be honest. So that's the most important thing. So you really have to curate that. You really have to be aware that whilst the first introduction, first job you might do for somebody is what is going to turn up in an invoice, but actually that invoice is then going to turn up into a long-term relationship. Because if you can manage that, then what you're actually doing is you're building your pyramid over time, Whereas if you're just focusing on the top bit, i.e. new business, you're just recycling all the time. And on January the 1st next year, you're starting again with a blank sheet of paper. And that is exhausting and also will not sustain your business longer than a short period of time. And it'll drive you mad and probably kill you in the same
Yeah.
prospect.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, one of the other questions I always love to ask, Jonathan, is I'll give you some context to this because as business owners, we all deal with issues and challenges and problems, and it can be a lonely space. And think, oh, we're the only one dealing with this. What's wrong with me? Or why isn't anyone dealing with this? And it's just not true. We all deal with a lot of the same things. So, having said that, I like to just share these things and share everyone's experiences so we can kind of go, oh, right, they're dealing with this stuff as well. So, what's been the number one biggest challenge that you have faced in your business so far? And what's the lesson that you learned from that?
Crikey. So I suppose when it all comes back down to these relationships. So if you are in a large business, I had 40 in the team, it was a large we're the largest advertising agency in East Yorkshire, for example. And yeah, you've got clients who are 10, 15% of your turnover. If that relationship comes back to relationships, that relationship starts to sour for whatever you're looking at a great big chunk of your revenue and your profitability walking out the door. So it comes back to you need to make sure that you are made, because obviously relationships start well, you're in the honeymoon period, and then they'll accelerate, and then they go into like a little bit of a dip, like all relationships do. So it's your job to make sure that relationship is kept fresh, like a marriage. It's so important to do that. And I guess that's my biggest learning. And we did have a client that walked out that was 15% of our revenue, and that was really, really tough. So
Yeah.
I made sure that never happened again.
Yeah, yeah, they're tough lessons to learn for sure.
Yeah.
But I think, again, we all go through those things, and it's really important to see what we can do to just help with that. We talking about relationships is one side of things. We still have to market and grow our business and to start the relationship, but oftentimes people fall into that spammy element because they're just trying to generate leads. What are some things that you've done to stay away from the spam side of stuff while trying to generate cold prospects and leads?
So it's been present. I mean, it's the networking element. I mean, you go to as many events as you possibly can do, to actually meet new people through existing contacts. And also, a lot of people just don't like networking, but I'm sorry, you just have to do it. You have to get out there and you have to be seen. And often the ones that you're looking forward to the least are the ones that are most productive. I think you just can't sort of gerrymander it into a place where you know exactly what's going to happen at this networking event, because random collisions happen, and that's where sometimes the magic happens. And sometimes it takes a long time. You have to be patient. You can't just like turn on the volume and expect things to come back at you. One of the best clients I ever had, I sort of nurtured a relationship over 4 or 5 years before he just rang me and said, Jonathan, do you know what I could do with your advice? Can you come and see me? And that turned to be one of our biggest customers over a prolonged period of time. So you have to be patient and you have to keep on doing everything. Nowadays, whether it's going to be LinkedIn posts, whether it be going to meetings, whether it be going to random meetings, going to events, just you've got to be present. You've got to be out there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. For people that may be in smaller locations, they're not as much networking out there for what they're doing, and maybe they provide a service that can, be worldwide. What are some ways that you have found they can continue to build that relationship and network, even though they geographically may live in a place where there's not a lot of networking opportunities?
Well, it's hard, but you have clients. You'll have your first client, then you have your second, your third client. Then you've got some leverage. So you start speaking to them and you get into their networks, and suddenly that expands your network from just the people that you're dealing with. Because if you've got clients who like your service and like you and like using you, they will be your ambassadors, and you have to sort of like turn them into your ambassadors. You've got to be a magnet, really. That's the sort of the amount of now. A lot of people say, well, you can only use that referral network for a period of time, then you will eventually run out. Well, I sort of disagree with that, because I think you can continue to actually not manipulate. That's totally the wrong word, but make the most of that referral network by keep asking the questions of the people that you are working with, your business associates, and they will recommend you if they like what you do, if you keep your promises, if you say you will do what you will do, and then you do it. It's all of that's building that reputation, and the reputation that you build is lifelong. It takes a lifelong to build a reputation, and not very long to get rid of it. That's the old adage, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great piece of advice. Look at not just your client as a client, but what can they do to open you up to a network of opportunity that you wouldn't have access to naturally. I think it's a really good way to look at it. Whether you geographically bound where, not much or not, it's a great perspective to be looking at as you build relationships and work with clients as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in our small little town of Beverly Stroke Hull, we are isolated from everywhere really. We're at the end of the line. So we ended up having clients all over the country just through those sort of soft networks.
Hmm.
And especially you do specialism and say, well, you should go and speak to Jonathan about that. And that's how it starts to the flywheel starts.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, as you're looking ahead, and particularly with what you do, one of the questions I've started to ask because it's just really interesting to see different people's perspectives, and it's kind of a big topic on people's mind is where do you feel like AI is fitting in with industry and business and marketing and all those things right now?
Well, it comes back to the top of the meeting. What we first started talking about was about relationships. Now, if you have that relationship, that is your defense against AI. If you do not have that relationship and you are just like a commodity, then AI will affect you and it will harm you. So it goes back to what I said, just double down on the relationship. Talk to your clients about how you're using AI. Talk to your clients how they could use AI. Become an expert on AI in your business to make sure that they relate to you, they refer to you. And you say, well, look, realistically, there are parts of our service that we do that you could do yourselves, but we could do it for you. We're using AI. And that we might have to look at pricing in a different way. And we might have to be charging more for our strategic intent and our advice, etc. So you're protecting yourself that way. If you do not have that relationship, you will be replaced.
Yeah. And you said something, I think I was at a mastermind this week, and we were kind of talking around this topic, and you just alluded to it there is even though people may be able to implement it themselves, oftentimes they just don't have the time or the ability to go in and try to figure out how to do it because you still have to figure out how to work AI
Well,
properly.
rubbish in, rubbish out. That's still
Exactly.
still the old adage. I mean, I'll just give you an example. When I started my business, we were on desktop publishing using Apple Macs in 1989 before the internet. And clients come to me and say, well, we can get the same software. We've got computers. We can do it ourselves. And I say, well, yeah, fair enough. Off you go. 2 years later, they're back saying, well, we couldn't really do it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, the same applies. Expertise is the one thing, and the relationships, as I said. That will survive AI. I am sure there are plenty of things that won't. So if you want to survive it, then just up your expertise, double down on your relationships, and as you say, they can do it themselves. But realistically, can they do it as well as you? Probably not.
Yeah, yeah, and the expertise I think is really important. And AI might get to the point, we probably will do over time, but even with what we do, oftentimes people say, "Oh, we'll just go to AI." They'll ask it a question, but the information that comes back with you as the expert know that's actually the wrong answer.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and I think that's a really
Or it might be
interesting
the
thing.
right partial answer, and there just might be enough wrong in there to make an error.
Exactly, exactly. So I think there is a lot of clarification that people just need to understand around that stuff, which is
For
yeah,
sure.
great
Yeah.
topics. So yeah. Well, over the next 2 to 3 years, what's your goals, Jonathan? Where would you like to go in your business?
I think from my perspective, I'm a lone warrior now, I guess, because I did my 27 years at the coalface with a large marketing agency, which I built from scratch. I think really what I'm trying to do is I am trying to be you mentioned before, being a founder is incredibly lonely. And
Mhm.
actually being alongside a founder with all of that experience that I've got. And I've worked now with probably about 40, well, actually 40 agencies directly and probably another 500 indirectly through various talks, etc. So I think I see myself as that person in the room that they can just hit glass in case of a problem, or just check out what they're thinking. Check it out with me if they're on the right track, or if something's
Mm.
bothering them, they can come to me. So I'm all that sort of thing, like consultant, a friend, a strategic advisor, all of those things wrapped into one, really. I think that's where I see myself. I don't need to build an empire. I've done that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, and it's much needed for sure. So, well, for people that are looking to get in touch with you and learning a little bit more about what you do, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, either through my LinkedIn profile, which is Jonathan Leafe, Leaf with an E at the end. That's easy to remember. Or my email is jonathan at leaf.co.uk. Very simple. I got Leaf domain probably in about 1991, I think. Very early doors, yeah.
Nice, nice. Excellent. Well, I definitely recommend everyone checking out Jonathan either on LinkedIn or the email he
Sorry,
just
can
gave
I
there
plug
as
my
well.
book as well? It's
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Can you see that? I'm an
Yeah,
agency
yeah.
and it get me out of here. So that's available. It's all about my stories, really.
Amazing,
Easy
amazing.
read.
Good, good, good. Well, yeah, guys, definitely check out everyone listening, check out the book as well. So amazing, Jonathan. Thank you so much for coming on, sharing your wisdom and experience and expertise over decades of business experience. So thank you so much for that.
Thanks,
And as a
Jason.
reminder, you're very, very welcome. And as a reminder for everyone listening, this show is sponsored by the LinkedIn Reverse Podcast Method, the new way established businesses are creating a reliable acquisition channel of conversations without using the old traditional methods that everybody hates. To find out more, direct message me on LinkedIn, have a chat. That's Jason A. Osborn on LinkedIn. The link to that will be in the show notes below. And until next episode, stay inspired.